Now let's talk about the horrific scenes in Syria of armed men loyal to the government, rounding up religious minorities, torturing, slaughtering them. They're talking about purifying the country as they kill men, women and children. Kosha, this was sadly predictable. We've seen tyrants removed in countries like Iraq and Libya to be replaced by something even worse. And is that what's happening now in Syria?
Appears to be predictable, predicted. Many people on camera repeatedly have said this and called for this over the years, Trump and Tulsi Gabbard being two more prominent examples. And, you know, the U.S. is at a crossroads in terms of its foreign policy approach, and we've had the 40, 50 years of policing the world, invading the world, inviting the world in through immigration, and now we're breaking away from that, clearly, with Trump and his team, about non-interventionism. And one reason is just economic, that we're stretched too thin and it's really none of our business to be doing that when there's so many domestic problems. The other reason is what you're seeing here, that we live in a very complicated world, and often the choice between leaders in these hotspots is not between good and evil, but it's between bad and worse. Yeah. And we go in removing the, quote, bad guy, and often you have no idea who's on the other side or what's going to happen and which types of actors are going to fill that void, and then you just create a bigger mess, which further supports the argument of the other side that wants the U.S. to keep policing and invading, and then that downward spiral continues. I don't know what Trump administration is going to do here because they inherited this mess, but it looks like they are going to stick to less interventionism, not more.
Well, there's some foreign policy experts and former leaders who look like absolute fools at the moment, the ones who celebrated what happened in Syria just a few weeks ago as if it was the dawn of some new age of democracy, not looking at who was actually seizing power. And you mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. It was only a couple of months ago that she warned about what could occur.
No tears for the fall of the Assad regime, but today we have an Islamist extremist who is now in charge of Syria, as I said, who danced on the streets to celebrate the 9/11 attack, who ruled over Idlib with an Islamist extremist governance, and who has already begun to persecute and kill and arrest religious minorities like Christians in Syria.
I understand.
Why that should be acceptable to anyone is beyond me.
And Donald Trump was warning about this some 10 years ago.
So I've watched Assad, and I've watched a little bit on the other side. The problem is the other side of Assad, we have no idea who they are. They probably are ISIS. I'm saying, are we better off with Assad? We have no idea who these people are. We give them weapons, we give them ammunition, we give them everything. Aaron, we have no idea who, I mean, maybe it's worse than Assad. So what are we doing? Why are we involved? We have to get rid of ISIS, very importantly. But I look at Assad, and Assad, to me, looks better than the other side. And, you know, this has happened before. We back a certain side, and that side turns out to be a total catastrophe. Russia likes Assad seemingly a lot.
Kosha, I think it was Tony Abbott who said it's baddies versus baddies when talking about Syria. And sadly, you know, it might seem simplistic, but it's the reality of what's happening there. And the West just keeps making this same mistake over and over again. Now, meanwhile, in Romania, the leading candidate there, Călin Georgescu, has been banned from running in the upcoming presidential election in May. Kosha, this is a NATO nation. This is supposed to be a democratic nation, but this candidate won the first round. That was deemed illegitimate for some reason. They were claiming there was Russian interference, and now banned from running, the front runner.
This is a pretty stunning development. And when you do things like that, you annul an election that was conducted freely, and then you ban the candidate from running again. It is not a consequence-free action that they're taking over here, because what they're doing is creating a pressure cooker environment in the nation where at least a certain faction of the citizenry is having a lid put on their demands, and there is no venue for them to redress their grievances. That is not going to end well. It never does when you look throughout the span of history. And you can see protests right now happening in Romania, people taking to the streets. So, you know, buckle up for more unrest, and hopefully, you know, worse things could happen. We hope not. It also very much validates J.D. Vance and the comments he's been making in Munich and other venues recently about why are we underwriting so-called democracies in Europe, and this phrase, you know, let's not be a threat to democracy, let's defend democracy, has become a chant almost, and the louder they chant it, it's because these things are happening in these European countries and others, and the whole world can see it.
Absolutely. And I think the Trump administration is watching on very closely here. Now, the Democrats are coming out in support of a pro-Palestinian activist blamed for some of the violent protests at Columbia University. The Trump administration wants to deport this character, but the Democrats are fighting for him to stay in the US. And earlier today, a federal judge did temporarily block Mahmoud Khalil's deportation. And he's been arrested over the weekend by immigration agents. Kosha, I just cannot believe the Democrats would come out and try to protect this guy from deportation. I mean, how crazy can you get just as far as electoral popularity? I mean, you are in politics, you do want to appeal to the American people, and we know where they stand on this. To try to stop the deportation of someone who's come into the country, who's causing trouble. We've seen the violent protests at Columbia University. What's the thinking behind this for the Democrats?
So politically, it's not a good move. And, you know, there are all these memes all over the internet where they wouldn't stand for the boy who was fighting cancer, for example.
13-year-old
wouldn't stand, or for Laken Riley's parents or family members and others, and then over here they're going to town on this. So politically, I think it is a big problem because they're out of step with what people want. Where this issue gets a little bit interesting, and it's actually one of the few where Trump's base is splitting a little bit, is what are the two forces at play? So one is zero tolerance for illegal behavior by immigrants, certainly illegal immigrants, but also legal immigrants like this person, and really using the full weight of deportation power to deport them. The other is free speech, which is a big value, obviously, in the Trump base. And there are questions about legally what did this person actually do, and if it was just limited to speech and signs, as vile and unhinged as they may be, that is a constitutionally protected right in the U.S., or did he do something more? Does he have some actual ties where he was aiding and abetting Hamas, in which case he violated some, terrorism laws, and that would be the thing. So I think the judge is trying to adjudicate that. This judge might have something to stand on, unlike all the other unhinged judges who are just rushing to challenge Trump's Article 2 powers. But we shall see. We probably don't know everything that the government has on this person, and I think this story will continue to develop.
But that comparison between them taking a stand for this character, but not people who've been victims of their policies, like Laken Riley's parents, I mean, it just speaks volumes. And Kosha, the Democrats are in all sorts of trouble. Political analyst Van Jones summed up their current situation on CNN, and he is from the left, but he is sane enough to realise this.
Can we talk about Ukraine or something? No. Look, man, we're screwed. I mean, we don't know. No, Democrats don't know what to do. This is a nightmare. The Democratic Party is going through a massive set of internal crises. You have a party that got trapped two ways. One, defending a broken status quo that nobody likes because they thought that Donald Trump was going to make it worse. But when you're defending the status quo, you're going to lose. And then offending most people in the country, calling everybody sexist and racist and transphobic and every other name, and then saying, please follow us. That's not a good strategy, folks.
He makes an obvious point there, but that they are in a crisis at the moment, and they've got to get their act together because the midterms aren't that far away. You need to be prepared.
Van Jones can be sage from time to time. You see those glimmers of honesty over there. And I think it worked for them for a period of time, trying to paint the other side as irredeemable, going back to Hillary Clinton and everything they did against Trump, as well as maybe defending this idea that the other side, the Democrat side, is more normal and less chaotic, and that whole line worked for a period. So they keep doing that, but it didn't this time. It didn't last very long. They've been beaten back, and they don't really seem to have a leader, too. Like right now, it's hard to know who is the leader of the Democrat Party that can corral them and herd the cats and align on one message. So they're out there in the wilderness, but not for long. I'm sure they will regroup and come back with a vengeance.
Kosha Gator, thanks so much for your time tonight.